Julian Grant stood at the entrance of his lavish engagement party, a glass of champagne in hand, the air buzzing with excitement and anticipation. In Millionaire Was About to marry, until he discovered his ex was the band leader. With a boy-child like him, we witness a pivotal moment of emotional upheaval as the life he meticulously crafted begins to unravel. Just as he prepares to celebrate his future with Elise, the unexpected appearance of Kara, the band leader and his past love, shatters his carefully built facade. What unfolds is a gripping tale of secrets, heart-wrenching revelations, and a struggle to confront a truth that could change everything he thought he knew about love, family, and belonging. Julian Grant stood near the grand marble staircase of his family estate, glass of champagne in hand, surveying the crowd of well-dressed guests who had gathered to celebrate his engagement to Elise. The night air was thick with laughter and the clinking of glasses, the soft hum of an elegant string quartet weaving through the opulent ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room, illuminating faces filled with admiration and anticipation for the couple's upcoming union. Julian's smile was poised, practiced, a perfect mask for the turmoil stirring beneath the surface. The engagement party was meant to be the pinnacle of his carefully crafted life, a testament to the success he had achieved as a rising star in the world of finance. Elise stood beside him, radiant in a sapphire gown that matched her sparkling eyes, her fingers entwined with his. She was the epitome of grace and charm, the woman who seemed to complete the picture of his perfect future. But just as the evening began to settle into a seamless celebration, the unexpected happened. From the corner of the room, the band's leader stepped forward to announce the next performance. Julian glanced toward the stage, curiosity piqued by the arrival of the band leader, a woman whose presence instantly unsettled him. Kara. The name echoed in his mind like a distant, haunting melody he thought he had silenced years ago. Kara, his ex-girlfriend, the woman who had once been the center of his world, now stood confidently at the helm of the band, her fingers poised over the piano keys. Her dark hair framed a face that had barely changed, still fierce and captivating. But what truly stopped Julian's breath was not just her presence. It was the young boy who accompanied her, standing shyly beside the piano, his wide eyes scanning the crowd. The boy looked so much like him it was impossible to ignore. The same deep-set eyes, the same unruly dark hair. A mirror image of the man Julian had become, but innocent and vulnerable in a way that tugged at something deep inside him. The ballroom fell into a hush as Kara's voice rose, soft yet commanding, leading the band into a soulful melody. The guests swayed gently to the music, unaware of the storm brewing in Julian's heart. Elise, sensing his distraction, squeezed his hand and whispered, "Are you all right?" Julian forced a nod, but his mind raced. How had Kara come back into his life like this? And why was the boy here with her? Questions flooded his thoughts, each one more unsettling than the last. The engagement party, meant to celebrate new beginnings, had suddenly become a crossroads of past and present. In that moment, surrounded by 200 guests dressed in their finest, Julian felt the weight of every eye upon him. Some glanced curiously between him and the boy. Others whispered in hushed tones. Yet no one knew the secret the boy might hold, a secret that threatened to unravel everything Julian thought he knew about his life. Kara's song ended, the final note lingering in the air like a challenge. Julian's heart pounded as applause erupted around him, but all he could see was the boy's face, so like his own, shadowed by uncertainty. Elise leaned closer, her voice tinged with concern. "Julian, what's going on? You look distant." He swallowed hard, reluctant to betray the turmoil inside. "I just wasn't expecting to see Kara tonight," he admitted quietly. Elise's brow furrowed. "Kara? Your ex? Why is she here?" Before Julian could respond, Kara caught his eye from the stage, her gaze steady and unflinching. The boy shuffled beside her, glancing nervously toward Julian, then quickly looking away. Memories flooded Julian's mind, late nights filled with laughter and whispered promises, the ache of their sudden parting, and the silence that had followed. He had moved on, or at least believed he had, until now. The band began another song, the vibrant notes filling the space between them, but Julian's world had shifted. The night he had imagined, filled with joyous celebration, was now overshadowed by the presence of the boy whose resemblance to him was undeniable. As the music swelled, Julian's gaze remained fixed on Kara and the boy. A knot tightened in his chest, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something unspoken. The engagement party had become the stage for a revelation he was not prepared to face. Around him, the guests continued their conversations, oblivious to the silent storm gathering within Julian. Elise's hand remained in his, but the distance between them had grown, a silent barrier erected by uncertainty and the secrets that Kara's unexpected appearance had brought to light. Julian knew that by the end of the night, everything would change. The path ahead was uncertain, tangled with questions he had no answers for. As the band launched into a lively tune, the boy's eyes met Julian's once more, an unspoken connection, fragile and profound. In that moment, Julian realized that the engagement party was no longer just a celebration of a future with Elise. It was the beginning of a reckoning with a past he thought was behind him, and a future he might have to reconsider entirely. The music faded into the background as Julian retreated to a quiet corner of the sprawling estate grounds, the distant chatter of guests muffled beneath the weight of his thoughts. The cool night air did little to calm the storm inside his mind. He closed his eyes briefly, forcing himself to breathe, to sift through the tangled emotions that Kara's unexpected return had stirred. He remembered those years ago, when their relationship had burned bright and fierce. Two souls caught in a whirlwind of passion and promise. Julian had been younger then, less certain of his path, but completely certain of Kara. They had dreamed of a future, whispered secrets under starlit skies, and imagined a life together that seemed unbreakable. But it wasn't. Their love had frayed at the edges, pulled apart by ambition and miscommunication. One bitter night, words were exchanged that neither could take back, and Kara had walked away without looking back. Julian had told himself she was gone for good, a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Now, standing beneath the vast expanse of stars, he questioned everything. Kara was here, leading the band at his engagement party, the boy with her looking strikingly like him. Was it possible? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. He felt a hand on his arm and turned to see Elise, her brows knitted with concern. "Julian, you've been distant all evening. Is this about Kara?" Her voice was gentle but edged with uncertainty. Julian nodded slowly. "It's more than just Kara showing up. That boy with her, he looks like me." Elise's eyes widened. "What do you mean? Like a relative?" Julian shook his head. "I don't know yet, but the resemblance is uncanny. It's hard to explain." Elise stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Are you sure you're ready for this? I mean, with the wedding and everything." Julian's jaw tightened. "I don't know if I'm ready for anything right now." He looked away, the memories flooding back too vividly. The late-night talks, the laughter that once filled their small apartment, the plans they made that never came to fruition. He thought about Kara's sudden departure, how she had vanished without a word, leaving him with nothing but unanswered questions and a heart full of regret. For years, he had tried to forget, to move forward with his life. He had thrown himself into his career, met Elise, and built a life that seemed stable and secure. But stability was a fragile illusion. The band's music began again, soft and melodic, drifting through the open windows of the estate. Julian's eyes were drawn back to the ballroom, where Kara's silhouette stood confidently at the piano. The boy played nearby, a quiet presence amid the swirling crowd. Elise sighed, her fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Maybe you're just nervous. It's normal to have doubts before something as big as a wedding." Julian forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's more than nerves." As they talked, the scene shifted in Julian's mind, replaying fragments of the past. He remembered the last time he saw Kara, how she had been distant, guarded, refusing to share what was troubling her. He had begged for answers, but she had only shaken her head and walked away. Had she been hiding something then? Something that now stood before him in the form of a boy? Elise misread his silence as hesitation about their future. "If you want to talk, I'm here," she said softly. "But you need to decide soon. People are starting to wonder." Julian nodded, grateful yet conflicted. He knew the wedding was fast approaching, and the clock was ticking. But before he could move forward with Elise, he needed to confront the reality Kara's arrival had forced upon him. He glanced back at the boy, who now sat quietly by the piano, eyes downcast. The resemblance was undeniable, a mirror that reflected not just his features, but a connection that demanded recognition. Julian's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. Whatever the truth was, it was waiting for him to uncover. The night deepened, but Julian's mind remained restless. He drifted through the rooms of the estate, observing the guests who celebrated unaware of the turmoil beneath the surface. Elise's laughter rang out nearby, but to Julian, it sounded distant, overshadowed by the questions that gnawed at him. How long had Kara kept this secret? Why had she never reached out? And most importantly, what did this mean for the life he had planned with Elise? As the band's last notes faded, Julian felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He was at a crossroads, caught between the life he knew and the unknown path that Kara and the boy represented. Determined to find answers, he made a quiet decision. Before the night ended, he would find Kara and confront the past that had returned with such force. With a steadying breath, Julian moved toward the backstage area, weaving through the crowd with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. Every step brought him closer to the truth and to a reckoning that would change everything. Behind the curtain, Kara waited, the boy watching from a distance. Julian's heart tightened as he approached, the intensity of the moment filling the space between them. "Kara," he began, voice low but steady. "We need to talk." She met his gaze without flinching, her eyes reflecting a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. The boy shifted nervously nearby, a silent witness to the unfolding confrontation. Julian's mind raced with questions, but for now, he held back, waiting for her to speak first. The past and present had collided in this unexpected reunion, and Julian knew that whatever came next, he could no longer ignore the truth that Kara carried with her. As the engagement party continued behind the curtain, Julian faced the reality that his carefully planned future was now entwined with a past he thought he had left behind, a past that demanded his full attention before he could move forward. The backstage area was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls as Julian stepped closer to Kara, the boy lingering a few paces behind her. The muffled sounds of the party beyond the curtains faded into silence, leaving only the tension hanging heavy between them. "Kara," Julian said again, his voice steady but edged with disbelief. "That boy, is he mine?" She met his gaze directly, the fire in her eyes tempered by a weariness he hadn't seen before. For a moment, no words came, only the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on them both. Finally, she exhaled slowly and nodded. "Yes, Max is your son." Julian's breath caught. The name, spoken aloud, made the reality undeniable. Max, his son, a boy he'd never known existed until this very night. "Ow!" Julian managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" Kara's eyes flickered with pain. "I was scared, Julian. I didn't know how you would react. Back then, you were chasing your career, and I thought maybe I was just a complication you couldn't handle." Julian ran a hand through his hair, the shock giving way to a tumult of emotions. Anger, regret, confusion. "I would have wanted to know. We could have figured this out together." "We tried," she said quietly. "I reached out a few times. Letters, calls, but you never answered. I thought giving you space was the only way to protect Max." Julian's mind reeled. The missed connections, the unanswered messages. It all painted a picture of two lives drifting apart, caught in a web of assumptions and fear. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come here at my engagement party?" Kara's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. "Because I want Max to have a father. Because you deserve to know the truth." And because I'm tired of pretending everything is okay when it's not. Julian looked down at Max, who shifted nervously, eyes wide and uncertain. The boy's resemblance to him was undeniable, but it was the vulnerability in those eyes that struck Julian the hardest. I don't know what to say, Julian admitted, his voice thick with emotion. This changes everything. It changes everything for me too, Kara said, stepping closer. Max needs you, Julian. Not just now, but always. Julian swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He thought of Elise, the life they had planned, the wedding that loomed just weeks away. The future he had envisioned now seemed fragile, uncertain. Have you told Elise? Julian asked cautiously. No, gotta replied. Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Julian nodded, appreciating her honesty, but aware of the complications ahead. We need to figure this out. For Max's sake. Kara's lips curved into a tentative smile. I'm willing if you are. The silence between them was filled with unspoken promises and lingering doubts. Julian felt the enormity of the moment, the crossroads at which they stood. Let's start with the truth, Julian said finally. No more secrets. Kara agreed, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and determination. As the distant music from the party resumed, Julian took a deep breath, ready to face the consequences of the revelation and the journey that lay ahead. Julian sat alone in the study, the grand mahogany desk before him strewn with unopened envelopes and half-empty glasses of whiskey. The distant hum of the engagement party drifted through the closed door, a haunting reminder of the celebration he had once anticipated with joy, but now faced with uncertainty. The revelation of Max's existence had shattered the carefully constructed world he had built with Elise, leaving him grappling with a new reality he wasn't prepared to embrace. He picked up his phone and dialed Elise's number, his fingers trembling slightly as the call connected. After a few rings, her calm voice answered, Julian, is everything all right? He hesitated, the weight of what he had to say pressing down on him. Elise, I need to be honest with you. There's something I have to tell you before we go any further. There was a pause on the other end, subtle but charged with anticipation. What is it? Julian took a deep breath. Kara showed up tonight. She told me that Max, the boy with her, is my son. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Your son, Elise finally whispered, disbelief coloring her tone. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know until tonight, Julian replied. She said she tried to reach me before, but I never got her messages. I'm as shocked as you are. Elise's voice cracked slightly. I need some time to process this. I understand, Julian said quietly. I just want you to know that I'm canceling the wedding. I can't go through with it. Not like this, not without sorting this out first. Elise's breath hitched. You're calling it off? Now. Yes, Julian said firmly, though his heart ached at the thought of disappointing those who had gathered to celebrate them. I need time to process everything, to figure out what this means for me, for Max, and for all of us. The line went silent again before Elise spoke, her voice wavering. I'm sorry, Julian. I hope you find the answers you're looking for. As the call ended, Julian sank back into the chair, exhaustion washing over him. He thought of the faces of the guests still gathered in the ballroom, the whispers and speculation that must already be spreading. He would have to face them soon, explain his sudden departure. Gathering his resolve, Julian stood and made his way back through the corridors of the estate. The once festive atmosphere now felt suffocating, the laughter and music mocking the turmoil inside him. In the grand hall, whispers ceased as Julian appeared, the crowd turning to watch the man whose life had just unraveled before their eyes. Eyes filled with curiosity, confusion, some with sympathy. Julian cleared his throat, stepping onto the small dais where the speeches had been made earlier. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, he began, voice steady despite the chaos within. I'm sorry to say that the engagement party and the wedding will be postponed indefinitely. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Julian raised a hand, silencing them. This is a deeply personal matter, and I ask for your understanding and respect as I navigate it. With that, he stepped down, the weight of his announcement settling over the room like a heavy fog. Later, in the quiet of his private study, Julian reflected on the conversations he'd had with close friends and family. Some urged him to move on quickly, to put the past behind him. Others offered support, reminding him that this was a chance to build something real, something meaningful. But Julian knew that before he could take any steps forward, he had to confront the unknown with Kara and Max. The uncertainty was daunting, but the responsibility was undeniable. He glanced at the door, where the muffled sounds of the party still lingered, then at the unopened letters on his desk. Letters from Kara, from the past, that had never reached him. Julian's fists clenched. He would find Kara, he would find Max, and he would face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to be the father Max deserved. Tonight marked not an end, but the beginning of a journey Julian could no longer avoid. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the canopy of trees that lined the quiet city park, casting dappled light onto the wooden bench where Julian sat, his gaze fixed on the small figure approaching him. Max, the boy whose presence had upended Julian's carefully mapped life, walked toward him with tentative steps, clutching a worn baseball glove in one hand and a small, slightly battered harmonica in the other. Julian's heart pounded as Max reached the bench, a shy smile flickering across the boy's face. The resemblance was undeniable. The same dark eyes, the same unruly hair, but beneath that, a vulnerability Julian hadn't anticipated. He offered a gentle smile in return, reaching out to ruffle Max's hair softly. "Hey, Max," Julian said, his voice warm but cautious. "It's good to see you." Max nodded, settling beside him on the bench. "Mom said you wanted to meet." Julian glanced over at Kara, who stood a few yards away, watching quietly but encouragingly. She gave a small nod, signaling that now was the time. They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of children playing and birds chirping filling the space between them. Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small music box he'd brought, a relic from his childhood, one that played a simple, melodic tune. "I thought you might like this," he said, holding it out to Max. The boy's eyes lit up as he took the box, winding it carefully and listening to the gentle melody. "It's beautiful." Julian smiled, relieved to see a flicker of joy amid the uncertainty. "Music's always been important to me. Maybe we could play together sometime." Max's grin widened. "I'd like that." As the afternoon unfolded, the ice between them began to thaw. They talked about school, favorite games, and the music Max loved to play. Julian listened intently, learning about the little details that made Max who he was, the way he loved to draw, his fascination with animals, the way he hummed tunes when he was nervous. Kara approached, her expression softening as she watched the tentative bond forming between father and son. "I know this isn't easy," she said quietly to Julian, "but Max deserves to know you're here." Julian nodded, his gaze fixed on Max, who was now experimenting with the harmonica, producing hesitant but hopeful notes. "I want to be here," Julian said firmly. "For him, and for you." Kara smiled faintly, the trust in her eyes a fragile but promising sign. "Consistency is important," she reminded him. "Max needs to know you're not just going to disappear." Julian met her gaze steadily. "I'm not going anywhere." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park, Julian felt a tentative hope take root within him. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with adjustments and uncertainties, but this first connection with Max was a beginning, a chance to build something real. Before leaving, Julian knelt beside Max, looking into his eyes. "I'm going to be here for you, Max. Not just today, but every day I can." Max smiled, a mixture of relief and excitement shining through. "I'm glad." Walking away from the park later, Julian's thoughts were a whirlwind. The joy of meeting Max was tempered by the reality of the responsibilities now resting on his shoulders. But for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to face them, ready to step into the role he never expected but now embraced with all his heart. Julian sat quietly in the cozy living room of Kara's modest apartment, the warm light from the table lamp casting a soft glow over the scattered toys and artwork that decorated the space. Max was nearby, engrossed in assembling a model airplane, his small fingers carefully fitting the pieces together. Julian watched him, a mixture of awe and determination swelling inside him. This was no longer a distant possibility. It was a responsibility he was choosing to embrace. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of new routines and tentative steps. Julian had committed himself to regular visits, carving out time between his demanding work schedule to be present in Max's life. It wasn't always easy, balancing meetings, travel, and the emotional weight of this unexpected fatherhood tested his limits. But each moment spent with Max reaffirmed his decision. Kara entered the room, carrying a tray with mugs of hot cocoa. She placed them on the coffee table and took a seat beside Julian, her gaze steady but cautious. "You've been showing up," she said simply. Julian nodded. "I promised I would. Max deserves that consistency." She studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "It means a lot to both of us." There had been challenges, of course. Max was still navigating the complex emotions of welcoming a father he had never known. Some days, he was eager and open, others distant and guarded. Julian learned to be patient, to listen more than he spoke, to respect the boundaries that Max and Kara set. One afternoon, Max struggled with a school project, frustration etched across his young face. Julian knelt beside him, offering quiet encouragement. "You're doing great," he said softly. "Sometimes things take time, but I know you can do it." Max looked up, eyes glistening with tears. "I'm scared I'll mess up." Julian smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's okay to be scared. I'm here to help." That moment crystallized the depth of Julian's commitment. Being a father was more than showing up. It was about being present in the highs and lows, the triumphs and the struggles. Kara observed these interactions with a growing sense of trust. The walls she had built around her heart and Max's were slowly beginning to crumble, replaced by a cautious hope that Julian might truly be the man who could be there for them. One evening, as they shared a simple dinner, Kara ventured, "I know you've had to adjust a lot. It hasn't been easy." Julian nodded, the fatigue in his eyes belying his determination. "Nothing worthwhile ever is. But I'm committed to Max, to you, to building something real." Max, seated between them, looked up and smiled shyly. "I like when you're here, Dad." Those words, simple yet profound, filled Julian with a warmth that chased away the doubts. He realized that family was not about perfection, but about showing up, time and again, with love and patience. As the weeks turned into months, Julian found himself woven into the fabric of their daily lives, helping with homework, attending school events, sharing bedtime stories. The challenges remained, but so did the growing bond between father and son. Kara's guarded demeanor softened, and she began to share more of her world with Julian, inviting him into family traditions and moments once held sacred. Trust was fragile but strengthening, built on honesty and shared responsibility. One afternoon, Julian watched Max run freely in the park, laughter ringing clear and bright. He felt a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. The journey was far from over, but the path they were carving together was real and filled with promise. In that moment, Julian understood that fatherhood was not a role he had sought, but one he had embraced wholeheartedly, a commitment to be present, patient, and unwavering for the boy who was his son. The rain tapped softly against the window pane as Julian sat across from Elise in the quiet corner of a small cafe. The dim lighting cast shadows over her face, revealing the tension that had settled between them like an unwelcome guest. The years of planning, the dreams they had shared, now felt fragile, shattered by truths that had come to light only recently. Elise stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, avoiding Julian's gaze. "I found out something," she began hesitantly. "Something you never told me." Julian's heart tightened. He had feared this conversation, knowing that the foundation of their relationship was crumbling. "What did you find out?" She looked up, eyes searching his. "About Max." I knew." The words hit him like a physical blow. "You knew?" he repeated, disbelief giving way to hurt. Elise nodded, swallowing hard. "I found out months ago. Kara told me in passing, but I didn't know how to bring it up. I thought maybe you'd tell me when you were ready. Julian's fists clenched beneath the table. You kept it from me. I was scared, Elise admitted, voice trembling. Scared of losing you. I didn't know how to handle it. The raw honesty in her words cut through the anger, leaving a complex knot of emotions in Julian's chest. You kept a secret from me when honesty mattered most. Elise looked down, shame and regret flickering across her face. I am sorry. I should have told you. They sat in silence, the weight of betrayal and misunderstanding hanging heavy between them. After a moment, Julian sighed, the anger giving way to a weary resolve. I've been trying to make sense of everything, he confessed. Kara and we've talked. I want to build something real with her and Max. But it's complicated. Elise nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. I just wish you had trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Julian reached across the table, taking her hand gently. I'm sorry for the pain this caused. I never wanted to hurt you. Their conversation shifted then, from confrontation to reflection. They shared memories of happier times, acknowledging the love that had once bound them even as they recognized the fractures that now defined their connection. Later, Julian found himself alone with Kara, the quiet of her apartment a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Elise knew, he said softly, watching her reaction. Kara nodded, eyes downcast. I was afraid to tell you. I didn't want to complicate things further. Julian took her hands in his, steadying himself. I want to build a family with you and Max. But we need to be honest, with each other and with everyone involved. Kara looked up, determination in her gaze. No more secrets. They spoke late into the night, unearthing wounds and misunderstandings from the past, but also planting seeds of hope for the future. Julian expressed his commitment to set aside old grievances and focus on the family they could create together. As dawn approached, Julian felt a fragile peace settle over him. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but for the first time, he believed they could navigate it together, honestly and with open hearts. The soft glow of candlelight filled the cozy living room as Julian, Kara, and Max gathered around the rustic wooden table, the aroma of roast chicken and freshly baked bread mingling with laughter and quiet conversation. The room was alive with warmth, a stark contrast to the cold uncertainty that had once clouded their lives. Tonight was different, a celebration not just of the season, but of the fragile family they were beginning to build together. Max's eyes sparkled as he eagerly shared stories from school, his words tumbling out with youthful enthusiasm. Julian listened intently, his heart swelling with pride and a newfound sense of belonging. Kara smiled beside him, her hand resting lightly on his, a silent affirmation of the trust and partnership they had forged. This means a lot to me, Kara said softly, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken memories. To see Max happy to have you here with us. It's the start of something real. Julian nodded, meeting her gaze with steady warmth. We've come a long way, and I want us to keep moving forward together. The evening unfolded with simple joys, playing board games, sharing favorite songs, and exchanging small gifts that spoke of thoughtfulness rather than extravagance. Max's laughter echoed through the room as Julian joined him in a silly dance, the walls of hesitation and fear crumbling with every moment. Kara's invitation to include Julian in their family traditions marked a turning point. It was more than an acceptance. It was a gesture of hope, a willingness to embrace the complexities of their blended lives with open hearts. Later, as the night deepened, Julian helped tuck Max into bed, the boy's eyes heavy with sleep but shining with contentment. Thank you, Dad, Max murmured, his voice soft but sincere. Julian smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Max's forehead. Thank you for letting me be here. Downstairs, Kara and Julian shared a quiet moment by the fireplace. We're building something fragile, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's ours. Julian reached out, taking her hand in his. One day at a time, he promised. Their journey was far from perfect, marked by challenges and the shadows of past mistakes. But in this small, intimate gathering, they found strength in honesty, love, and the courage to face the future as a family united. Not by circumstance alone, but by choice. As the first snowflakes began to fall outside, blanketing the world in silent white, Julian felt a profound sense of peace. In the warmth of their home, surrounded by love and acceptance, he understood that family was not defined by perfection, but by the resilience to grow together, despite the odds. The evening air was crisp as Julian led Kara and Max through the softly lit garden path that wound toward the small gazebo at the edge of the property. Twinkling fairy lights draped the structure, casting a gentle glow over the intimate gathering of close friends and family who had come together to witness a moment years in the making. The nervous excitement thrummed beneath Julian's calm exterior as he held Kara's hand tightly, Max skipping ahead with a bright smile, unaware of the weight behind the night's significance. As they reached the gazebo, Julian turned to Kara, his eyes reflecting the flickering lights and the depth of his emotions. "Kara," he began, voice steady but filled with feeling, "we've been through so much pain, misunderstanding, and uncertainty. But through it all, we've built something real, something worth fighting for." Kara's gaze softened, her hand finding his. "We have, and Max has taught me the meaning of hope and family." Julian took a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "I want to promise you, here and now, that I will be by your side, not just as a partner, but as a father to Max, and as someone who will always support and love you both." Max's eyes widened, and he looked up at Julian with a mixture of awe and happiness. "Will you marry Mom, Dad?" Kara smiled through tears, nodding. "Yes, I will." The guests erupted into warm applause, their faces glowing with joy and support. The ceremony was intimate and heartfelt, marked not by grandeur, but by the genuine connections that had brought them to this day. Vows were exchanged, not just promises of love, but pledges to nurture the family they had formed through perseverance and understanding. As Julian slipped the ring onto Kara's finger, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a recognition that the messy, complicated journey had led them to a place of belonging. Max beamed beside them, his small hand clasped between theirs, a symbol of the life they would build together. Later, as the celebration continued with laughter and dancing under the stars, Julian caught Kara's eye and whispered, "This is just the beginning." She squeezed his hand, her heart full. "Together, we can face anything." In that moment, surrounded by those who loved them, Julian understood that family was not about a perfect story, but about the courage to embrace imperfection with open arms and unwavering commitment. The future was theirs to shape, grounded in love and the promise of new beginnings. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of their modest home, casting a golden glow over the quiet room where Julian, Kara, and Max lay tangled in the warmth of a shared blanket. The sounds of birdsong drifted in from the open window, mingling with Max's soft breathing as he slept peacefully between them. It was a scene far removed from the chaos and uncertainty that had once defined their lives, a testament to the resilience and love that had bound them together. Julian traced gentle circles on Kara's hand, his thoughts wandering back over the journey that had brought them here. What began as a shock, a disruption to carefully laid plans, had blossomed into something unexpected and profound. Their path had been far from smooth, marked by misconnections, unspoken fears, and the slow, sometimes painful work of rebuilding trust. But now, as he watched Kara's serene face and Max's innocent slumber, Julian felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The family they had forged was imperfect, yes, messy in its beginnings and complicated in its growth, but it was real. It was theirs. He remembered the early days, uncertainty clouding every interaction, the cautious steps toward understanding and acceptance, the moments of doubt, the challenges of blending lives, and the fears of failing those they loved. Yet through it all, they had persevered. Max stirred, eyes fluttering open to meet Julian's gaze. A sleepy smile spread across his face, and Julian mirrored it, feeling the warmth of connection that had grown stronger with each passing day. "Good morning, Dad," Max whispered, his voice thick with sleep but full of affection. Julian's heart swelled. "Good morning, buddy. Did you sleep well?" Max nodded, snuggling closer. Kara's eyes opened then, meeting Julian's with a smile that spoke of shared triumphs and quiet joys. As the day unfolded, they moved through their routines with a rhythm born of familiarity and love. Breakfast was a lively affair, filled with laughter and playful teasing. Julian helped Max with his school projects, while Kara prepared for her work, the household humming with the peaceful energy of family life. Outside, the world continued its rush, but within these walls, time seemed to slow, a sanctuary where they could simply be. In the evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, Julian looked around at the faces that had once been strangers bound by circumstance, but were now united by choice. The conversations flowed freely, punctuated by shared stories and plans for the future. Later, Julian found himself alone on the porch, gazing at the stars scattered across the night sky. He thought about the journey, the unexpected twists and turns that had challenged him to grow, to forgive, and to embrace love in its most authentic form. He understood now that perfection was a myth, and that the true essence of family lay in resilience, acceptance, and the courage to face life's complexities together. As the cool night air whispered around him, Julian felt a profound peace settle within, a quiet assurance that, no matter what the future held, they would face it united. Their story was not one of flawless beginnings or simple endings, but of messy, beautiful growth. And in that growth, Julian found home. If you love the story, like the video and subscribe.